And we'll be talking a little bit more about the PQIP Trainee Probation Officer later in this webinar. Thank you. And I will hand over to Nikki.
Thanks, Sam. Hi everyone, my name's Nikki Wetton and I work with Sam on the central recruitment of trainee probation officers. So as Sam mentioned, that's called PQIP. So yeah, plenty to get stuck in with there and we'll be sure to tell you about it later. And now I'm going to hand over to Lewis.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Yeah, my name's Lewis. I work at HMP Northumberland as a prison offender manager. I've recently done the professional qualification in probation, passed that in September 2021, and I've been working at HMP Northumberland since October 2021.
Fab, thanks all. And I've just noticed a question in the chat about recording the session, so I've pressed record, so just to let everybody know that the session is being recorded for people who aren't able to attend so that they can catch up at a later date. If we could move to the next slide, please, Matt. Thanks. So I'm just going to do a little bit about who we are and what we do. So we'll have a number of people on the calls for these sessions. So some people will be very familiar with what we do. And so for those of you, this will just be a bit of a refresher. And there will be other people who might not know a great deal about the prison service or the probation service and therefore might be quite interested just to have a kind of introduction. So we sit under the Ministry of Justice and we carry out sentences given by the courts in custody in the community, and we work to rehabilitate people in our care through education, employment and behaviour change. In frontline roles, that includes working closely with people in custody or people on probation, and these really are careers that can change people's lives. You can really get involved and make a difference. I've worked in probation for over 20 years and I'm immensely proud of the opportunity to work with people and to be able to work with them at a point in their lives where, you know, they need some guidance and help in making changes and being able to provide them with that. Her Majesty's Prison and Probation Service can be broadly split into two organisations. So you've got the public sector prisons. So we've got colleagues here from the prison side, and prisons obviously keep those sentenced to prison in custody, help them to lead law-abiding lives and useful lives, and work with them while they're in prison to prepare them for release. And we're responsible for 131 prisons across England and Wales. And then from a probation service point of view, we work with around 230,000 people a year who are on probation, and they can either be on probation in the community or people who are soon to be or have been released from prison. And we work to support their rehabilitation and resettlement into the community whilst also protecting the public. So I'm now going to hand you over to a video to give you a bit more of a flavour and introduction to the service.
Okay, so this is the first time we've done this presentation. It should play through because I'm sharing sound, but if somebody could just shout at me if you don't hear it, I'm going to start playing it now.
Hi, my name is Amy Rees, and I'm the Director General for Probation, Wales and Youth. So that means I look after probation services in England and Wales, and also prisons in Wales. I hope you're watching me and listening to me today because you're seriously considering joining us in the probation service as a PQIP. You'll hear from lots of fantastic staff today about why they've joined the job, what they get from the job, the difficulties of the job, the challenges and the positives. So I wanted to tell you a little bit from my perspective about why I think you should join probation. We all know that we have to get up every day and go to a job and do work. And some days you really feel like doing that and other days you won't. And what really interests me is what makes you get out of bed on the days where it would be quite nice to stay in bed. And what makes me get out is it's hard to imagine a job that can matter more. Why does this job matter so much? Because your job as a probation officer, if you join us as a PQIP, if you get qualified, if you become a probation officer, your job is to make sure, one, the public is kept safe from people who might otherwise do harm, but 2, that you're giving people with often a difficult background for a variety of reasons a second chance at their own life, a second chance to contribute to society. That is huge. It's motivational. It changes lives. It changes the lives of your family and friends. It is one of the fundamental things that make up society, and you can be part of that. On top of that, we hope you get to work with a great bunch of colleagues who are like-minded, who you can have those conversations with, and that you can continue to train and learn professionally, and so that you'll be challenged as well as motivated. We also might be talking about, or you might be wondering about, but what do you think of us? What do you think of all people who are joining PQIPs, whether you're joining straight from university, whether you've had a previous career? And I just want to say to you, you are so welcome. We're an organisation like lots of public services that have been through lots of change in the last few years, structural change, because we formed a new probation service, but also all the challenges of COVID, all the difficulties of that, but also the things we've learned about how to work differently. And what we find so valuable is the new fresh pairs of eyes and fresh pairs of legs. What do I mean by that? I mean that you come with your own unique knowledge and background, and you can help give us a new perspective. But also by legs, I mean energy, that you can bring a new energy to our organisation to help us meet those all-important challenges that I talked about. So if you're looking for a career that will every day motivate you to get out of bed, to come to work, to do something that matters, that won't always be easy, but will work fantastic people, doing great things and challenging you, this is the place for you. And I hope you join us. I hope you enjoy the event. Thanks very much.
Okay, so that was an introduction from Amy. Amy was talking particularly about PQIPs, which is our professional qualification in probation. So that's your entry route for either current probation support officers or external candidates into the probation officer training program. And again, so hopefully we'll speak a little bit more about that in a second. What I'm just going to do now is just to move on to this slide. Now, this slide deck is going to be placed into a PDF and sent across to all registered delegates today. And within this slide is there's these little video icons here, which you can just see the little orange camera. And what you do if you can, once you've got this slide deck in PDF form, what you can do is you can hover over them and click Control and click, and it will take you to an introductory video or a case study of a member of staff who is either introducing the role or performing the current role. So hopefully it'll give you sort of just some additional content to catch up. Or again, we don't want to go through all the videos there, but we use this sort of an introduction to some of the roles before we hand over to our speakers today. But what we try to do is just with this very simple infographic is just to create a little bit of a visual of a make-believe city or community. And so just to touch base on how our different careers and our different roles within both the prison and probation service can interact with an offender or a probationer as they go through it. And so just to outline it, so I guess again, this is quite fictitious and quite high level. There's a lot of complexities, of course, in real life in terms of the transitioning, but you know, as a very generalist view, individuals are placed due to a prison sentence, and then so our prison roles would then start to interact and rehabilitate and manage that individual. Entry in terms of so operational support grade, prison officer. So the difference between the two. So again, we have links which kind of clear essentially your operational support grade is your supporting officer and running gatehouses, enhanced gate securities, and other duties, where your prison officer is again your other operational role at a slightly higher grade. But within the prison, again, and these are just some of the roles that are available. We have caterers, say dog handlers, but industry managers is a very generic term for a wide varieties of senior production instructors, as we call them, which can help. And there's other specialist positions, smaller numbers under chaplaincy, all within that sort of prison environment. And then in general, and all the time again, an offender would potentially be just discharged or sometimes bypass into the probation environment, which again is outside of the I guess the prison rules in general. And we talk about approved premises and probation services officer offering that traditional rehabilitation and support. There is another route as well. Again, if you do not serve in terms of a sentence, but you do get your sentence to community service, and then we would still interact with roles that are part of the probation service, and these are like community payback supervisors and program facilitators who would again help supervise and enforce community public orders within the community. So again, in that area. So once you again, what we circulate this around, you can find out a little bit more about these roles by either clicking on some of the links at the end of the presentation, or sort of viewing one of the some of the videos there, which we sort of introduce you in terms of that nature. So just conscious of time, Debbie, do you want to should you want me to play a video, or should we hand over to some of our subject matter experts now?
I think if we hand over, if that's okay with Lewis, and let's hear from somebody who's doing the job in real time, and then people might have some questions that come out of that, if that's okay, Matt.
No problem. So again, all the videos are on here. So as I do check them out when we send it across, I will stop sharing my screen just for a second, and we can I'll reshare once we've gone through those, and we can finalize the presentation. So I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thanks, Matt. And I'll just introduce Lewis. I know obviously Lewis has introduced himself briefly, but Lewis has helpfully agreed to come along and talk particularly about a day in the life of a probation officer. So if it's all okay with you, Lewis, I'll hand over to you now.
Yeah, I just want to check that everyone can hear me first.
Yeah.
Right, that makes a good start. So yes, I'm Lewis. I'm working at HMP Northumberland currently. Just to give you a brief insight as to how I've got to this point. So I studied sociology and criminology at Northumbria University, and then from there I went on to be a prison officer for about 2.5, 3 years. So I worked at a couple of different prisons, worked at HMP Wymont, and then I worked at HMP Durham. I can't explain how valuable being a prison officer was in terms of the experience you get from that role and the challenges. Again, I'm not going to speak about that role because I know somebody else is going to do that, but I don't want to downplay that in terms of the character building that it had for me, developing my confidence and really coming more from the academic side of things at university and the world of work, essentially. So as my job as a prison officer progressed, I kind of started hearing rumblings about probation, speaking to different staff within the prison, working in the offender management unit, and it came across my mind to go for the PQIP, which I'd also seen on social media as well, advertised on social media, and I just became in a position where I thought it was like a nice natural step for where I wanted to be in my own career. That brought me onto the PQIP in July 2020. I did a 15-month training program, having had the degree, obviously, that I've mentioned there. With regards to the skills required, in a bit of prep for this session today, I actually have just tried to summarise it into 5 key skills, because I think you could go on throughout this whole meeting on the skills that you need and also develop within the role in probation. The first one that I've got down is communication. A lot of what we do is not just communicating with colleagues on a day-to-day basis, but other agencies as well within the criminal justice system and beyond, with regards to things like safeguarding of vulnerable children and adults, And as I say, just communicating with your colleagues on a daily basis, I think that's a key aspect of what's involved in the role. For myself, organisation's key. We're managing complex cases, often quite a lot of things going on at the same time. Be a lot of meetings, a lot of due dates for things like risk assessments. So the way I tend to work myself is I very much rely on my diary, writing everything in my diary, and I kind of approach that like I do a little refresher each morning when I go into work and take a look at my diary for that day or that week. I find that helps me kind of just reset a little bit. I think you can get a bit overwhelmed sometimes, in all honesty. So that's a big part of what helps me as well. Resilience as well. I think it was previously mentioned there that if you were to be a probation officer, you're going to be dealing with some complex cases. Sometimes some cases that don't really want to speak to probation. They're going to give a bit of resistance, and I think sometimes, you know, as a probation officer, you do have to be resilient, not take things too personally, and just keep working at that as well. Teamwork I've got down kind of links in with the communication aspect of it as well. As a probation officer, you'll often be working on some cases as part of a multi-agency team. That might involve agencies like the police, safeguarding, mental health. So in that aspect of things, you know, it's about making use of them resources as well. Not necessarily feeling like you've got to take everything like on yourself. It's about using the wider resources around you as well, and I've found that to be essential really in what I do. The last one I've got in terms of the skills is reliability. So, and I picked this up a lot from working in the prisons as well, in terms of if you're working with an individual who's perhaps got quite a lot of trust issues, especially maybe doesn't like the criminal justice system, is quite resistant. It's just about if you're saying that you're going to do something, to follow through on that action. You know, and I think that's kind of helps to build an element of trust and validity behind your practice as well. As I say, that's something I very much picked up from the prison side of things and carried into probation, where it's still absolutely essential. So that's the key skills that I've got down. As I say, I could go on much further, way more skills involved, but for the purpose of this, I'm just going to try and keep it down to me 5 there. And in terms of my average working day or week, I know I touched upon it a bit there before, but I would usually go in the morning, check my emails first thing. It's amazing how many emails you can get from leaving one day until coming in the next day. I'll usually pick up anything that needs responding to with a degree of immediacy. I've always found that it helps me at the start of the day to write out a little task list for that day, tick things off as I go. Again, that just helps with making me feel organised. In terms of the day-to-day things that I do within the prison, you know, I'm regularly going out to the different wings, interviewing people to inform my risk assessments. Also working with outside probation officers, working in the community, working towards in the pre-release stage of their cases. So do like a handover with them, or sometimes they come into the prison as well, more now that COVID's you know, like dying down a little bit and things are opening up again. You know, people are getting the opportunity to come in more, which is always good to do the face-to-face aspect of it. Attending meetings, like the multi-agency meetings that I mentioned before as well, from the prison, giving the input from the prison side of thing. That also involves kind of liaising with the police, again, safeguarding services, mental health, any agencies that need to be involved for the purpose of managing that case. Before I go off at the end of the day, I would usually just review my task list again, tick off everything that I've managed to do, maybe get a bit of panic on about the things that I've not managed to do. Again, that's me organisation kicking in a bit too much. But I think that moving on in regards to why the role is important, I think more working in the prisons again, I've found you often find individuals at the lowest point when they come into custody, and they very much, you know, look to you as their probation officer to kind of lift them out of that point that they're at. You know, kind of you're responsible for making the sentence plan in custody, so very much looking towards when somebody's released, you're very much looking to be releasing kind of a different person than you meet on that first day. And as I say, there's other agencies involved, but as a probation officer, you're the sole maker of the risk management plan and the sentence plan to actually address those issues. And I think above that as well, just flashing back to the message from Amy Rees, is that all that stuff that you're doing as well is with a view to protecting the public. You know, we're often dealing with people who are very dangerous, you know, have committed some serious offences. So for one, in my role, that makes me like proud to be part of contributing towards that as well. That's a really important job, because you know, essentially we want to be in a position where these people don't go and commit further offences and, you know, perhaps like harm someone for the rest of their life. So that's why I think the job is so important. With regards to, I think a misconception about the role for me, just considering the prison side of it, is when I worked as a prison officer, I perhaps thought that I might know more than I do going back into a prison, probation side of things. But, you know, for anyone who's worked in a prison, they'll tell you, you know, prisons are so vast in terms of the amount of staff that work in a prison, the different departments. You don't necessarily see the full picture of the offender management unit side of things if you're a prison officer. So I think for me, once I've completed my PQIP and I've gone into the prisons, it's been another kind of learning curve for me. A good learning curve, because I think, again, it's just enhanced my overall knowledge. But I did go in perhaps thinking that I might know a little bit more than I actually do. Another misconception, you know, about the role, I think for me, when I was a prison officer, I envisaged a probation officer being more people facing, and what I mean by that is, you know, there are times when you can be sat at your computer for periods writing risk assessments. It's not as perhaps people facing and hands-on as you would want it to be. Having said that, I think the way that the probation service is going with the recruitment and that side of things, you know, I think that definitely will change going forward, which will be a good thing. Closing remarks and advice that I'll just give to anyone is, you know, just be confident. Like I say, no matter what your experience is or your background, I do think that, like, it's great to have a diverse range of people in the job. Everyone can offer something, regardless of your previous experiences, and I think that together can just build a really good probation service. I will take any questions if anyone has any.
Thanks, Lewis. I can't see that we've got any questions in the chat at the moment. So I think what we'll do is, if it's okay, is I'll hand over, I think I'm handing over to you, Damien. And then if we've got questions, we'll pick them up at the end.
Great. Thanks,
There's
Debbie.
just one question which just came in. I don't know if you want to address it now. I think
Yeah, I can see that there. Yeah, so at the minute I'm solely based in the prison at HMP Northumberland. what happens is obviously when you've done your PQIP, you get the kind of choices of where you want to work, what would work kind of best for you. So you would either be based community probation or prison. For me, obviously, with my background, that's kind of why I wanted to go back into a prison, having been a prison officer before, but you do get the choice.
Thanks, Lewis. And possibly just worth saying that whilst you're undertaking the PQIP programme, you are based in the community, not within a prison. But as Lewis says, once you've completed the programme, there is the opportunity to move into prison roles. So I'll hand over to Damien now.
Thanks, Debbie. That's a nice segue. And to be honest, Lewis can probably do more justice to the prison officer role than I can, but I will do my best. So prisons. What do we know about prisons? Well, prisons are largely probably unknown in local communities. So thinking back to kind of Matt's kind of infographic and that kind of map, what we find is prisons are actually quite large employers in the local kind of community, but actually they are largely a hidden service. It's probably fair to say, you know, we've spent a number of years building very, very big walls around our prisons to keep, you know, offenders in, you know, and it's going back to that kind of journey around, you know, applying the kind of sentences from the courts and you know, and keeping people in custody, you know, to kind of prevent victims and those kind of things and help with rehabilitation. But what we've largely done as well is we've kind of kept the local community out of prisons. So as you say, there's this kind of cloak of secrecy around prisons and the kind of hidden service, and also lots of, you know, picking up some of Lewis's kind of terms around lots of kind of misconceptions around prisons. So prisons are really quite unique environments. They are quite challenging at times. But if you've got the right kind of skill set and the right kind of aptitude and kind of life experience, you know, it can be a really rewarding kind of career. So there are a number of kind of entry points that you can kind of come into prisons. And as Matt mentioned earlier on, there are a massive variety of roles. Again, thinking about communities, you know, we have education, we have work, we have healthcare, but also, you know, lots of kind of specialist roles that we employ. So things like catering, health and safety, works teams, kind of estates, going into things like we are the largest employer in the UK for forensic psychologists. So a whole kind of plethora of different roles, which quite often people when they think about the prison service, just think prison officers and that kind of black and white uniform. We are, you know, so much more to that. And I think as kind of Lewis has kind of, you know, alluded to and kind of gives that a little bit of insight into his background, you know, there is the opportunity for people to kind of move around once you're in the kind of service, and that you can move around roles within the prison service or actually across, you know, prisons and probation and, you know, even to the wider kind of Ministry of Justice and the civil service. So, you know, we're not actually saying that you would be a career prison officer, but, you know, actually we're looking at people joining the organisation, hopefully as a career, and then having that ability to kind of move around if they want to do that. So thinking about kind of the entry points into prisons, we have largely kind of two roles, which are our kind of operational focused, so prisoner facing roles that are largely kind of entry level. So first of all is our kind of operational support grade role. So the operational support grades, if you ever step inside a prison for the first time, the operational support grade is probably the person that you would first be greeted by. So they largely help maintain the kind of safety and security and order of prisons. So they work alongside prison officers. They do have limited prisoner contact, but their key role really is about kind of maintaining the security of the fabric of the prison, escorting kind of vehicles and prison visitors, doing kind of rub down searches, and also doing things like dealing with prisoner correspondence, listening to prisoner phone calls if there's any kind of intelligence, those types of things, working on the CCTV cameras. So it's a really interesting role for those people that are maybe quite interested in kind of dipping their toe working into that kind of prison environment. And we do have a number of OSGs that see out their career as OSGs because they like that kind of camaraderie, the teamwork, the role of kind of, you know, being that kind of first line of defence from the prison perspective. So it is a role that carries a lot of responsibility. It is often that kind of first line defence around stopping kind of contraband and mobile phones and drugs and things getting into prison. So that, you know, that real kind of ethos around protecting and safety is really important. But what we also see is that we see a number of our kind of OSGs that want to go on and progress their career. and some of those will go on to become prison officers. So we do have people that come in off the street as prison officers, but equally we have our own staff that, as we say, they've gained a level of kind of skills and experience working in the prison. They decide that they want to move into that role. So prison officers, so what do they do? There's lots of misconceptions around prison officers. So people think prison officers are particularly very authoritarian, are probably kind of, white, middle-aged, bald-headed men, tattoos, maybe come from kind of an army kind of military type background. And we do have people like that in the prison service, but equally we have people from all kind of walks of life and all kind of different backgrounds. And, and our aspiration is really to make sure that we are reflective of the people that are in our care. So there is no stereotypical prison officer. Everybody will bring something different to the role. And really, we want people from those kind of diverse backgrounds, because as you say, actually, largely it's about teamwork, and somebody, you all bring something different to that kind of team. And, as a team, you will rely on each other's kind of strengths to kind of, get through those days. So I think if we think about prisons, people will often see what they see on the press, and they will think about, kind of riots and fights and all of those kind of things. And they do happen at times, but actually, largely prisons are fairly stable, and the work is more around helping people kind of reform and kind of address some of their kind of offending behaviour. Now, I think it's probably fair to say that and Lewis can correct me if I'm wrong, you possibly aren't going to get those kind of Hollywood blockbuster style endings that people will expect, but sometimes it's the really, really small things that can make a huge difference to somebody. So, taking the time to sit down with somebody and help them maintain those kind of family links, help them kind of connect with their partners or their children, making sure that somebody, is able to get out of their cell on a day and, and have a shower and those kind of things, go to work, go to education. All of those little bits will mean something to that person that you're dealing with. So, we rely really a lot on kind of things like 5-minute interventions. It's those really kind of small kind of conversations and things that you might feel that actually are quite, kind of insignificant, will really make a difference to that kind of person that you're supporting. And really, we're looking for people that will deal with prisoners with care and respect and integrity and all of those kind of things. Don't get me wrong, it is a challenging environment. You will have tough days, but that's where the teamwork comes into it. You will be very reliant on your kind of colleagues for that kind of support. And prisons are, very much like a kind of a family unit, and they will support each other kind of with some of those challenges that they're going through. As a prison officer, you will come in and now be an apprentice. So all of our new prison officers are apprentices. They go on to a kind of a 15-month custodial detention apprenticeship. So you will have the support of an apprenticeship coach and a new colleague mentor to help induct you and get you through that kind of learning journey. And the importance of the apprenticeship is about professionalising the service. It's about giving you the skills and the abilities to be able to act as a competent prison officer. And that will take time. It's not as if working in a prison, if one of the analogies I often use is if you work in retail, you can move from Sainsbury's to Morrison's or something like that, and you'll roughly have an idea of what to expect. We can't necessarily recruit fully fledged prison officers, but what we're looking for is people that have got the aptitude and the skills and the life experience that we can train and develop to become prison officers. So that is part of our commitment to our new recruits, is that we will support and develop you to kind of move on and progress your career as a prison officer, and we'll give you the basic kind of skills and training that you need to be able to do that in a competent and safe way. And the apprenticeship will go some way of being able to kind of support you with that. What it will also do is it gives you a professionally recognised qualification at the end of that kind of journey. And as I've already mentioned, people will come into that kind of prison officer role, and then they will look to kind of specialise and move around. And as Lewis mentioned, we will have different roles in prisons. And he's a great example of how somebody can use that kind of prison background and move into other roles. But we have opportunities for kind of people moving into specialisms. So we employ kind of dog workers, drug workers, offender supervisors like Lewis, but also we have physical education instructors. But then we have the opportunity for people to kind of move up the ranks, so being able to kind of progress their career into kind of more senior roles. So there are lots of opportunities for those individuals that want to work in the prison service and want to have that kind of aspiration career. There's another entry point that I didn't kind of allude to at the start, which is something called unlock grads. So depending if somebody's coming from an academic background, we have a fast track scheme at the moment, which is, as I mentioned, called unlock grads. And that's kind of a 2-year scheme where we support individuals that come in and they undertake a master's qualification. And what we're really looking for there is to help people become leaders of the prison service of the future. So it's about giving you that exposure to the role, and then helping you kind of develop that kind of career over a period of time. And some individuals will go out and leave the prison service and gain private kind of sector experience, and then we'll come back into the prison service at a later point and kind of move up the ranks. So there's lots of opportunities really there for individuals that kind of want to come into the prison service and kind of progress their roles. What I would say is there is, for anybody that is interested in thinking about being a prison officer, there is lots of information on our website, and in the presentation that Matt will share later on, there is lots of links to kind of that information, lots of videos, which, I would encourage anybody to take the time to have a read through, as you say, address some of those kind of misconceptions that people might have around, do I need to be a certain age? Do I need to be a certain height? Do I need to be a certain build? Do I need to come from a certain background? That, as I said earlier on, that isn't the case. But there's lots of case studies on our website that, show that people from different backgrounds do come in, do work as prison officers, can make a difference, and can help people kind of change their lives. So I will stop there. I can see we have got a hand up. So we'll open for questions if that's okay.
I'll just unmute that person now. So Catherine, I think you should now be able to ask your question directly if you unmute your camera, or you can type it in the chat. Options available.
Hello, I wanted to ask a question, but I was trying to access the chat box and I'm not able to. Is that not an option on this call?
Yeah, it is. If you should be, it should be top bar next between people. What does it say when you click on the chat box? Does it say?
There's one that's I can click on which says people, which is second in, but the far left chat and on the right hand side share and views. They're not. I'm not able to click on those.
I mean, Catherine, are you comfortable kind of verbally giving us your question, or yeah, then feel free.
Okay. So to go, and you said the first model that you can take is operational. Coming into the prison service. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you need? Do you need to have experience first, or qualifications?
No. I mean, there are no. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, or just can you just apply and start there?
Yeah, you can. So you don't have to come in as an operational support grade. What we sometimes find is if people are a little bit apprehensive about maybe having that kind of high level prisoner contact, they like to come in as an operational support grade first to kind of build that kind of jail craft and build that kind of knowledge and confidence in working in that kind of, rather unique environment. But people can come in as a prison officer straight away. It's not a prerequisite that you have to have been an OSG first. There is no formal qualification, so it's slightly different to kind of the PQIP or the probation route that others have mentioned. On a prison officer side, there is no formal qualification that you need to be. So we're not looking for people coming with a particular qualification or an academic background. What we're really interested in is life experience, transferable skills, those interpersonal skills. How do you deal with people? So as part of the recruitment process, you will go through a number of assessments. Some of that is about assessing levels of numeracy and literacy. That's not a requirement of the role, but it's more around what support we would need to put in place from a functional skills perspective if somebody was to become a prison officer, and how we can support people going through the formal apprenticeship route. But there are no formal qualifications. So have a look at our website, Catherine, if you're interested. We are actively recruiting at the moment for most prisons across the country. Within the prisons as well, we also have a variety of different prisons. So depending on where you live in the country, you might decide that you're interested in a particular working with a particular offender group. So we have female prisons, which are kind of geographically dispersed.
Can I interrupt you there? I'm wondering, would I be able to start working in the prison that has a therapeutic wing?
So we have a couple of prisons that do have therapeutic wings. There's actually one that's about 10 minutes away from where I am at the moment. So they are smaller numbers. So we haven't got, it's not every prison would have a therapeutic wing. So depending on where you are, it might be a requirement for you to kind of relocate, but there are options. Most individuals would come in as a prison officer first and then specialise as a prison officer therapeutic communities officer. But there are options to work in therapy prisons as well in other roles, not just in the prison officer roles. But all of those vacancies that are advertised will be on the website. So if that's what you're interested in, Catherine, have a look at our kind of Justice Jobs website, and there'll be any kind of opportunities listed on there.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Okay. If there's no more questions, should I just progress through? We've got a couple more slides just to signpost, and then we can put it out then for. So again, any questions? I say if you can ask the chat function, just raise your hand, and I'll enable your mic and camera if you're happy to do it on that way. What I will now do is just try and re-share my screen to go through the presentation. Just bear with me. So to pick up where we left off. So as Damien and I just alluded to the prisoner, we've gone through this the various the PQIP route in terms of the probation officer route there. As I say, we have videos on all the other roles as well to link into that. And the next slide again, which again, all this is available, just sort of just underpins, I guess, some of the interlinkages that all of these roles have with each other. So, and again, it's not always, as I say, that's why it's a fairly I guess busy in terms of the number of alliance, because I say if you're in probation support or offices, it is a wide variety of different settings that again help I say manage and look after the offender or the throughout the journey. So again, just just an outline of how, I guess, and these are just I say a fraction. These are probably some of our core roles, but there are numerous others that are out there as well. But these are some of the core positions that we would potentially have available, and where they sort of touch base within that different settings throughout the journey of an offender or somebody in community service. And then just at the end, say we talked about, Damien mentioned, and some useful sites. So here is some useful additional information to eventually to investigate and to link into. So we have again the prison and probation jobs, which is an excellent resource. Again, some of the videos that are in this presentation are within there. Again, if you're looking at interested in applying, there's a specific candidate portal. We have the operational support grade page as well, which is a great I guess resource if you're interested in that particular position. And then in terms of the PQIP, again, we have the train to be probation officer webpage as well, which again has numerous case studies and information on the PQIP process. And the final one, HPPS careers, is sort of an overall landing page that gives a real insight in terms of all the wide variety of different positions, not just operational positions, but non-operational positions, administrative support positions, and also specialist positions as well. And again, we touch base on some of them, but there are so many that already are out there available that we can cover them all, or indeed map them on our fictitious city there. But again, there's numerous careers available within the service. And then I'll I guess leave that there in terms of if there was any other final questions. I say just please use the chat function. We're more than happy to ask and answer, respond, or raise your hand, and more than happy to answer any final questions.
I can see, Matt, that there's a question around the opportunity for students to build experience. So shorter work experience opportunities or voluntary options. So just saying that I see a lot of students and graduates working and volunteering within criminal justice in the third sector. I suppose from a probation point of view, unless my colleagues tell me otherwise, there isn't really the option at the moment for voluntary work in the probation service. We do have roles that are available. So, for example, we're recruiting quite a lot of community payback supervisors. So people can do that work and they deliver work at weekends. So, you know, there might be a possibility to do that on a part-time basis whilst you're still studying potentially. Similarly, you know, we have programs facilitators roles. So I think the only other thing I was kind of going to say in terms of what's been said for similarly for prison is there are other entry routes kind of into probation, and that might be something that some of the students want to look at instead of kind of voluntary work, as I say, because it's not available at the moment for probation. I'm not sure about prisons.
Yeah, so we have we do on occasions have kind of short kind of term work experience placements that go on in some prisons. It's probably more on a localized basis with kind of links with kind of local schools and colleges and universities directly. There are certain functions within HMPPS. So I know psychology was mentioned there, where they do periodically offer kind of sandwich placement years. So they might bring somebody on a kind of a 12-month fixed term contract working one of our kind of psychology departments as part of that kind of route into developing a career in HMPPS. Yeah. So I think there are options. They would normally be advertised on kind of our kind of civil service jobs page and justice jobs. But if people are interested, I would usually say make a connection with your kind of local prison, see what they can offer locally.
Thanks, Damien.
Just to know that there is a campaign going live hopefully in the next 2 weeks, which for if specifically targeted at students looking to gain experience in probation through administrative positions. So we'll be launching a campaign where we will be able to support a wide variety of different working patterns. And again, they are for mainly case administration or other administrative positions within the probation service. But again, they're particularly great for if you're looking to get sort of, I guess, the old term foot in the door, or again, experience, not particularly maybe doing a frontline operational role, but still within that environment. There is a national campaign going out in the next 2 weeks, so you can keep an eye out for that as well.
Thanks, Matt. I've also noticed that Chris has posted a question around the ability to move between prison and probation. And again, I'll kind of defer to colleagues in a moment. I think that's more easy now than it used to be. So since 2014, prison and probation have been one organisation under the Ministry of Justice, so that allows for more movement between the roles. I think as Lewis has kind of mentioned, there's still distinct probation roles within prisons, but yeah, I think that is becoming easier and part of the work that we're doing, particularly in the workforce programme, to look at how we can move people around the organisation.
Yeah, and I'd agree, Debbie. And I think we're starting to see, as you say, from a prison perspective, certainly when PQIP campaigns, so the kind of trainee probation officer campaigns go out, we do see existing prison officers want to move on to that, like Lewis, that they feel that they've gained a skill set that will now help them kind of, work with offenders with a slightly different lens. So we do see some movement between different parts of the organisation, and I guess it's something that we would encourage as well from a kind of staff retention, staff kind of development, progression. So, where those opportunities exist, people, are able to kind of move around and as I say, actually into the wider organisation as well, not just within prisons and probation, but into the wider MOJ. If we think about the other organisations that sit under there, there's, Legal Aid Agency, Office of the Public Guardian, Majesty's Courts Service, Tribunal Service. So there are lots of opportunities that we do see existing colleagues moving around the organisation and taking that kind of skill set that they've learned in one part and applying it elsewhere.
Okay, I can't see any other questions, and I'm conscious that we have nearly run out of time. So as Matt said, I think the PDF will be circulated to everybody so that you've got a copy of the slides, you've got the links to videos. you know, please do go and explore all the different career options that are available across the prison and probation service. As I said right at the beginning, I've worked here for 20 years and it's a great place to work. You know, so I think absolutely go and have a look. We are actively recruiting across a number of roles, so now would be a great time for you to join us. Don't know if any of the colleagues have got anything else they want to add.
Just
No,
to quickly add that we're so PQIP is live at the moment in London, Kent, Surrey and Sussex and East of England, and the other geographical regions go live on the 30th of May. And if anyone's interested, visit the Train to be a Probation Officer website and you can register your interest, even if there's not a campaign live, and you'll receive an alert once it does go live.
Great, thanks, Sam. And I was just going to say, lots of opportunities across the prison space. So have a look at those websites if you are interested. It's not just prison officers. There are lots of other roles out there as well that we would encourage people to think about. But other than that, just thank you for coming along today and hearing from us.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you
Thanks.
all. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.